Okay, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here live and direct from the studios in Long Beach, and this is Wayanuha. Let's talk, conversemos. And we are going to invite our audience, those who are watching the signal, as you go through our page. On Facebook, we are live on my profile page, Ronnie Figueroa, and also through our YouTube channel, GAHFU Garifuna, as well as Twitter. We have a Twitter page. And so in this day and age, we try to use all the platforms, all social media to try to reach out to not only the people that look like us, but everybody in different ages as well, right? I think we all have something to share to the world. And today we have the opportunity to do that with one of the people, one of the persons who I admire. I've been admiring for a while. He is Mr. Frank Palacio. He is somebody who I've known for years, but then I'll let him answer my questions so he will tell us how we met. But for now, I would like to ask Frank, how are you doing, Frank, this evening? It's a beautiful Tuesday evening.
It is a beautiful evening, and good evening, Roni, and your vast audience at Wayanuha. This is a pleasure for me. We had set up this interview a couple months ago when my book, Garifuna Mother Tongue, was first launched, and you gave me the opportunity to come on to your program. However, we had to cancel. I was one of those unfortunate situations, but I am here this evening. We are going to make it up, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you and learning about your audience. And hopefully, what we have to talk about will be something that resonates with the Garifuna Nation, which is worldwide, as most of us know. So this is really an honor and a privilege to answer your question, how we first met. This goes back close to 20 years ago. You had a, it was like a book fair, but it was more than that. It was more like a vendor's market being held at Cal State LA. And you invited my sister Angela, who's a big fan of Wayanuha. You invited her to extend the invitation to me to come and talk about my first book at that time, almost 20 years ago. Look at that. And
Wow.
I was really excited to meet you at that time, 20 years ago, and at that event at Cal State LA, which is also my alma mater. That's where I graduated with my bachelor's from. And that event was really exciting. It was successful, and that's when I learned that you, Roni, are a mover and shaker in the business of promoting your Garifuna brothers and sisters. So I've been a big fan of yours as well.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you, Frank. It is a very powerful message that you have given there as far as your alma mater, the school, because Cal State LA was the place that welcomed the Garifuna community back in 2000, probably 2006, when we did the Garifuna Community Forum. And it was an opportunity to bring vendors, Garifuna writers, poets, people in the jet set, people who are the movers and the shakers in the community, and we were able to accomplish that, to bring them to a forum, to bring them to an institution of learning and learning about Garifuna. I remember in the audience we had Afro Latinos from Peru, from Colombia, from Mexico, Latinos as well, and of course all kinds of people. I don't even want to call people by name or color, or but it was just a very large audience, and we had 3 or 4 classrooms full of people. Some were learning drumming while others were learning the language. We had a professor who is Anita Martinez's sister, who lives in Florida. She also came to give a workshop on the Garifuna language, you were promoting one of your books. So do you remember which book was that, Frank? Or and
Of
also if you have any
course.
input on this forum.
Yeah, that book was called Middle Schooling 50 Stories about the Humor, Rewards, and Challenges of Teaching, mainly teaching in the inner city here in the United States and in particular in Los Angeles. That was the book that got me started on my career as a writer. And that book has been quite successful because you helped me promote it at that event. And now, 9 books later, the latest one I think is my best work so far. It's because it's about my favorite people, our people, Wayanuha. It's about Garifuna people, Garifuna mother town.
Okay, so a net desire. This show is about introducing important Garifuna people, movers and shakers. There's someone in the audience who wanted to know what it is about. So my show is able to reach out to the community and bring out people such as Mr. Frank Palacio, who's a retired teacher, who's a writer, and who's someone who promotes the culture as well. And today we are going to be talking about his book. It's a brand new book that's available on Amazon, and this book can be purchased for little or nothing. I think it's a treasure to have, really, because of the amount of work that you put into it. It is a fortune. If you don't have this book, please make sure you get your book, your copy on Amazon, and it is worth it. It's got plenty of information, over 500 words, sayings, commands, and emotions. It's called Garifuna Mother Tongue and over 50 famous Garifuna people, Garinagu, right? So that's what the show is about, Annette, and we welcome you to the show. Thank you for the opportunity that you give us to come into your home and be able to showcase some of the people who are the movers and shakers, Mr. Frank Palacio again. Frank, is there anything you want to add to that?
Roni, I like that your audience, as you mentioned, we are one people. We are Garifuna from from different countries, and we have different backgrounds. But most of all, we are about one race, the human race, and it is everyone's responsibility to treasure and preserve all the languages that God blessed us to have in this earth. But our focus is the Garifuna language, and that is a language that is probably could become extinct if we don't have people like yourself who have made it their life's work and calling to put the word out that we should speak the language, learn it, share it, treasure it. So you and I are under the same umbrella when it comes to Garifudunwo, and we love what we do. I've heard you mention it before that no one promotes Garifuna language and culture and get paid for it. We do it out of the kindness of our hearts. And because there is a necessity, it's like a calling. We feel it and we want others to feel it as well, that we can do much more as a people. We can unite. We can solve problems, talk about issues that affect Garifuna people in Belize, Garifuna people in Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and who knows, probably elsewhere as well. We can use the power of the internet and harness this technology. Technology sometimes can divide us, but if we use it for good, in this case, it can strengthen us. We can use it for a positive purpose, and it is a valuable tool. You talked about the platforms that you can be accessed on. This program is streaming on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and so on. So Some people might see a glass as half empty, but truly it could be half full if people think about what we need to accomplish to preserve our language, our customs, our songs, our food, our traditions. Then the internet can be used in that area, and we just need to reach as many people as possible, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it for us? So I'm passionate about Garifuna language and preserving what our ancestors have left us with to enrich the rest of the world.
Wow, I love the message. Arufudahati. Arufudahati means teacher. And so
Yeah.
I call Frank Palacio Arufudahati. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born, raised, schools that you attended, and about your family upbringing, please?
Sure. I am a Belizean. I grew up in Belize City in the 60s and 70s. And my family were, there were a few Garifuna people in Belize City in those days. So from that standpoint, my family helped to bring Garifuna duo to Belize City. And being a Garifuna in a city where you are a minority of a minority, it was not a very popular time to be Garifuna. Nowadays, we are more educated and we are more enlightened, but during those times, it was in the height of colonialism where people wanted to fit into society rather than celebrate their individualism and to celebrate their cultural heritage and identity. So that's the background that I grew up in Belize City in particular. Thanks to wonderful parents, enlightened parents. My dad was a teacher, and my mom was his partner in life. In everything that he did, she supported him. So they had a strong Garifuna mindset that they were going to teach their children Garifuna. It wasn't popular to be Garifuna or speak Garifuna in Belize City in the 60s and 70s. And guess what? Sometimes I think that people are afraid to speak Garifuna in Belize, even in the year 2023. And I encounter that same situation here in Los Angeles. If you see Garifuna people hanging out together, their go-to language might be English, Spanish, Creole, and sad to say, Garifuna is on the back burner, which I think is really sad. It's a shame because we claim that we are proud to be Garifuna, but we don't want to show it, and we are not doing things to preserve the language. And at some point, it's we're going to wake up like Garifuna, like Andy Palacio sang. Who will speak Garifuna to me one day? Who will cook Garifuna food? Who will teach others about Garifuna identity and culture? We are probably going to lose it if we don't do a better job of preserving it. So that was my background growing up in Belize City. I attended St. Joseph School, Catholic school, and then I went to St. John's College in Belize City. That's one of the high schools that is known for producing some of the brightest minds in Belize and in the country. And I was very fortunate to go to that school because that's also where my dad was educated. So that is a current theme, it seems, in my life, following my dad's footsteps. So I also went to Belize Technical College, that's known as sixth form or junior college. And there I majored in economics and Spanish, two subjects that have played a pretty major role in my life because it opened up my view to the world, and it helped me to think and want to aspire for higher education. So I am grateful that I went to good schools, Catholic schools in Belize, and they helped me so that when I migrated to the United States, I was able to continue my education and not feel as if I had been deprived educationally. I was able to compete because of the wonderful foundation that we have in Belize. And of course, that foundation was laid by our Garifuna educators. One of the things that Garifuna people used to be very proud of is that we go to school. Education is the key to success, and we are good at languages, and we also have a strong spiritual foundation. Those are some qualities that we can trace most Garifuna people, even today, wherever you are, you're going to find that there's an emphasis on education. There's an emphasis on spirituality. And the culture and the dances and the other things fall into place. But I have to come back to the theme of it must start with the language because the language is the driver. That's one of the things that distinguishes us from other groups. That's one of the things that will allow us to access the other parts, the traditions, customs, and dances, and oral tradition, for example. Those are from where the language originated. We can't get into Uraga or Garifuna stories if we don't understand, if we don't speak the language. So that's a little bit about my background growing up in Belize. I was also very interested when I found out that Honduras has a Garifuna population that's probably the largest. I assume that because Belize had two districts that are Garifuna centered, Dangriga and Toledo, and we have seven or eight, or well, four or five Garifuna villages in addition to two Garifuna towns. Total in Belize, the Garifuna population, it's probably about 8,000 more or less. And in Honduras, they're saying it's upwards of 40,000. Maybe you can help me with some of these figures, Roni, but the point being
Yeah,
that there's a
actually,
Garifuna world outside of the one that I came from. And then I found out that Guatemala has even more Garifuna people than does Belize as well. And
yeah,
then,
I was
yeah,
shocked when the last census in Guatemala, more people identified as Garifuna because, as a lot of people don't know, Garifuna have migrated. Garinagu migrated outside of Livingston and Puerto Barrios, and they are all over Guatemala, even in Quiche, in the highlands where the Mayans live. And
wow,
so the last statistics, we always knew that it was about 5,000, but then we were shocked when we heard 21,000 Garifuna
no
people in
way.
Guatemala. That is a lot. Yes, and so Honduras probably has more than 50,000. I am so sure because they have over 54 Garifuna communities,
Oh,
and then in Nicaragua you have about 6 or 7 Garifuna communities as well along the Caribbean coast. But I wanted to take this opportunity, Frank, to thank Charlie Marr, who is online listening and watching. Witigunyo Honsun Garinagu Hamasun Girigia Abaiseni Ibiriwo. That's from Charlie Marr, Charlie Martinez in Dangriga. Also Morris Herrera. He's a retired, let me see, Coast Guard, Garifuna, living in Dangriga. He says, continue to do what you are to preserve our language, Frank. So that was from Morris Herrera. Also, uh, Alex Lara, he is watching in Honduras in Tegucigalpa. He says, felicidades, tío Ronnie. Saludos cordiales para Alex Lara en Honduras. Also, Ana Nunez, Tero Galdes are watching. Greetings to all of you. Also, Sandra Valentine, Kevin Nunez, and many, many more people who are connected. So we are really thrilled to have Frank Palacio, who is full of knowledge. Oh my God! And in this segment, that for that question that I asked, which was only my second question, you really gave us a lot because you not only gave us your personal viewpoint and the history of how you came from Belize, where you grew up in Belize City, and then coming to the States, and then you talked about your upbringing, and it was just a lot of information that we need to like really take time to analyze because it's a lot. And then to think about people who came before you to the United States, a lot of those people who came with education degrees, teaching degrees from Belize and from Central America, like Guatemala and Honduras, who might have had some type of professional degree or training, and they were able to make their homes out of, coming from small communities and villages. They were able to buy houses to just prosper in large cities, like in, for example, the number one Garifuna population is in New York, followed by Los Angeles, and
Nice.
then we have now New Orleans and all of that. And every one of those three communities that I mentioned in the United States are segmented by Hondurans, for example, are the number one in New York, along with Guatemalans. And then Los Angeles is heavily Garifuna from Belize. And then New Orleans is heavily Honduran. So, yes, people have prospered and they have taken the wealth that they have built in the United States back to their villages and built beautiful homes and live very comfortable. But it's not about other people. Today it's about you, Frank. It's about celebrating you. Yes. And again, I want to be able to plug this book for all of you who are out there watching. I want you to please go online on Amazon and look up the Garifuna mother tongue and over 50 famous Garinagu. And this is over 500 words, sayings, commands, and emotions. And it's written by Frank Palacio. It's at an affordable price. I think it's only $20, 19.99, I believe,
Yes.
that I paid for it. I'm not too sure. Maybe Frank, you could give us a little bit on the price.
Yes. This book, I feel the price is very modest at 18.99. Most books of this type or quality, this depth, it has close to 200 pages. Those books usually retail for $30 to $35, but I am comfortable with 18.99. I am not doing writing this book to get rich. I am writing this book out of love and concern for our Garifuna brothers and sisters. It's a means of getting the word out, the message, au Buguyanu, that this is our culture, our race, and we have to pass on the message. Roni, you are one of those dedicated and inspired leaders who realizes that we have to continue the work to spread Garifuna awareness and knowledge. So I am following some of the work that you do. And of course, there are many people also that are spreading the same message, that are also writing books. And that's one way of helping to preserve our culture. So again, it's not to make money, but it's to spread a message and awareness, and to think about how the Garifuna people have always worked together traditionally. Now we need to harken back and bring those Garifuna values to let our young people be aware of them, that it's a collective. The Garifuna people traditionally don't like greed, and that's why all bubuguya no, you for me and I for you. That's how we prosper. So again, I'm comfortable with this price. And Ronnie, you mentioned our good friend Charlie Marr and Maurice Herrera and our other listeners. I'd like to thank them for being on this program. And I know that we can all do our own little part wherever we find ourselves, whichever Garifuna community you are in. The worst thing that we can do is to become complacent and not be involved in Garifuna community. I am also a part of the Garifuna choir, and that's one of my outlets. I saw it as a need to be involved with Garifuna matters. That's one of the things that I learned from my parents, RIP. Most times, Garifuna culture is heavily matriarchal. So the women are doing all the work. They are raising the kids. They are teaching the culture, promoting it. They have dance groups. They work outside and they come back and work at home and they help the community to move forward. But the Garifuna man, that quiet, strong Garifuna man, I think that we can do even more that we are currently doing. And our ladies love and respect us. And I think we should help them out by promoting Garifuna Duo. That is very essential. So again, shout out to all your listeners out there, Ronnie. Um, the power of the internet. One of my um, big areas that I love, social media, in particular Facebook, because it's cheap and it's a platform where you can talk to people about things that affect them and their community and how we can help the world know that the Garifuna people were singled out through colonialism for extinction, but we are a strong people. We have survived and we will continue to survive if we take the necessary steps to move forward and not look backward or not become complacent. So, social
Thank you.
media, Twitter, obviously Facebook and YouTube, we should use those, harness that energy so that we can put all our collective brain power together and solve some of these issues that affect us. How can we network? How can we stop poverty or killings in certain countries? When one Garifuna person faces discrimination or faces violence or is kicked off his land in Honduras or Guatemala, stuff like that really break my heart. And I know that if we put our collective power together, if we organize, if we um, put out positive solutions, if we encourage each other, there is strength in unity. So those are things that we should be working on.
Thank you, Frank. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Garifuna Choir, two things on the
Yeah,
Garifuna Choir. How long have you been a member? And I want you to please name some of the people who have at one point been members of the Garifuna Choir and who's still around.
sure. Um, my parents were heavily involved in the Garifuna choir. In fact, my dad, because he was a teacher and he also knew music, he became the director of the Garifuna choir in the early 80s here in Los Angeles. I had just arrived to Los Angeles at that time and I was trying to get established going to school. I was busy. So I put the choir on the back burner until after I finished my bachelor's. I was able to, because my dad kept urging me, he would tell me, "You can really sing, you have a beautiful voice. Why don't you join the choir?" So I gave it a try, and I never looked back after that. I became a member, starting probably around 1990 or so. I became full time with the choir. So we're looking at over 30 years, and
Wow.
it's a really powerful ministry because it's one way of passing on the culture through our songs, through our music, by going to rosaries, by comforting the sick, by being involved in Garifuna people's lives, by helping with their spiritual needs. So we are always recruiting. So it's really fun if you like singing. I like singing. I like music. Ronnie, I like the music that you play. I wanted to translate that love of music to love of spirituality and loving Christian music. And I found that in the Garifuna choir, we're always recruiting. We sing at weddings, rosaries, wakes, any Garifuna event. Here in Los Angeles, we are called on sometimes not only by the Garifuna community, but the Spanish or Latino community, or even the Creole and regular English community. They've noticed that the Garifuna choir is very organized. We're one of the longest standing Garifuna organizations anywhere in the world, Ronnie. So at one point, I was able to become the leader of that group, the director, and some of our members that have been the stalwarts. Ellis Cayetano does a really wonderful job. He was the director also for many, many years. We have people like Mr. Prospero Castillo and his wife, Vicky Castillo. They were members until they retired, went back to Belize, but when they visit, they are with the choir. We have Miss Betty Arzu. She's a strong member. We have Lourdes and Ray Arzu. They are brothers and sisters. We have Therese Francis. We have Gregoria G. Paulino. Our members are from Dangriga, Belize, Labuga, and we have a really nice representation, strong membership. Um, but we're always in need because the choir is aging. And at some point, we're going to have to come to terms with the fact that we might wake up one day and there is no longer a Garifuna choir unless we get our young people involved. And that is really, really hard. There are too many things competing for their interests. So they are not joining us like they should, although there is a really strong need for Garifuna songs, music, and spirituality. So that's pretty much the background with where the choir is concerned.
So
Also,
you are a singer as well, right? Because you
yes,
sing in the choir. You're a musical composer with 3 songs or recordings under your belt. Am I right?
absolutely, Ronnie. I've been blessed. I figured if I can sing for the Lord, then I can use some of the same gifts and talents to also sing regular songs and vice versa. If I can sing regular songs, then I can sing for the Lord as well. So there is a nice symbiotic relationship there.
Beautiful, excellent. I'm not going to ask you to sing right now because you may not be prepared with that throat. But definitely will be looking forward to seeing you and the choir during the 19th of November celebrations in Los Angeles, which will be on the 18th of November here, Saturday, with the Garifuna Mass. And I know that your choir is going to be part of it. And then we have also asked you as the director to be part of the choir for the Guatemalan Garifuna National Day, the following weekend, which will be Thanksgiving weekend on November 25th. And so the 18th for Belize, um, Garifuna Settlement Day from Belize, and then the 25th of November, that would be for the celebration of Guatemala National Day, Guatemalan Garifuna National Day. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see you there and honor the work that you have been doing along with the entire choir.
It will be
With
an
that,
honor to be there
yes,
to represent. And
no,
thanks
with
for the
that, thank you.
invitation, Rodi.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. So during the pandemic, you worked with the University of California, Berkeley. Wow.
Yes.
As a Garifuna consultant. What was that experience like? I mean, I admire that university. I know where it's located. I know people who have attended that university. It's mostly known as the law for law, right? For law school.
Yeah.
And but tell us about your experience as a consultant, a Garifuna consultant there.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, Berkeley is one of the best universities in California, and it has a worldwide reputation. It's one of the best in the world, for that matter. And I had the opportunity to work as a language consultant and teach Garifuna. I had to go back to the drawing board. I can understand Garifuna.
Yeah.
I can speak it fairly well, but when it comes to understanding how the language works, breaking down the grammar, and looking a little deeper to be able to explain to university students, comparing it to English. For example, in English, there's something called paradigms. When I was growing up in Belize City, paradigms would be knowing how to conjugate a verb. You have present tense, past tense, past participle, you have progressive tense, future perfect, conditional perfect, all of those. We can do
Wow.
that in English. Now imagine if you are thrust into a situation to have to explain that from English into Garifuna. I didn't know that we have some of those same principles at work in
Yes.
Garifuna.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I was able to pick up some textbooks. I picked up one that the linguist that you are affiliated with, RIP.
Oh
What's your
yes,
name?
Miss Michelle Goldwasser,
Yes, Dr. Michelle
Dr. Michelle.
Goldwasser.
Yes.
Yeah, and you, Roni, and your foundation have done a fantastic job in putting that work forward and continuing after Dr. Michelle Wasserman had passed. Goldwasser, sorry. And I was able to use that textbook and learn Garifuna on the fly while teaching it and explaining it to students, sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish. Yeah, right. But it all worked out, and it taught me that if we had learned Garifuna in school the way that we are teaching it to Berkeley students, they mastered the language, the foundation, like in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. And that showed me that because one, they were interested, two, they were intelligent, and three, they were really focused. If we used half of what they did, right, as ordinary Garifuna citizens, we would be able to rise up to the occasion and learn it maybe not as quickly because these guys, most of them are geniuses,
Yes.
pretty
You know,
much.
Frank, one of the things that I learned during the process of writing the Garifuna language workbook with Dr. Michelle Goldwasser, along with all the teachers who were there, including the late Clifford Palacio, Mr. Melesio Gonzalez, Carlos Domingo Alvarez, Mingo, Ruben Reyes, my wife, Sharon Morales, is the fact that this simple tool taught me how to approach Garifuna language learning a lot easier. The Garifuna language is a VSO language: verb, subject, object. If you know that, it's easy. Then you just go on with that. That's how it is spoken, right? Verb, subject, object.
Yes.
If you put it like that in Garifuna, easy.
Ronnie, you are amazing because when you read Garifuna, hey, it's really, really good. It's
I had
perfect.
good teachers.
You're
Yes.
very modest. You're
Yes, no,
good
I
with
had Mr.
languages.
Clifford Palacio was my mentor, and he really taught me from like I felt like I was back in primary school because he really took me down to remember the seven parts of a sentence and all of that. I'm like, wow, I forgot all of that. But that, you have to learn those things, right, to be able
Yes,
to bring in a new language and make it
that's
easier
true.
for you to learn.
It does make it easier once someone shows you what these basic steps are. They're like building blocks, right?
Yes, yes.
But Garifuna speakers are never ever taught that at home, right?
Mm.
Because the language is
Natural.
first of all, it's
Yeah.
natural and it's oral. It's not written
Ex-
down, not
exactly.
much, right? I
Yes.
mean, we're just lately coming into where you have a Garifuna book here or there, and this is probably within the past 5, 10 years or so. But prior to that, I went through all my life not reading one book of poem in Garifuna, not one novel in Garifuna. The only time I saw Garifuna written would be at a Garifuna mass, and no one could read it without practicing it. We'd have to practice for
Yes.
like 2 weeks.
Oh my God! Yes, you're right. I've read the Garifuna booklet for the mass, and
Yeah,
I've read some of the lyrics. And it at the beginning, about 10, 15 years ago, it was very tough to read it. But then, little by little, they were adopting the rules and regulations of the language structure, so they were able to change those words and make it correctly, grammatically correct. So
and
now it's a lot easier.
standardized.
Yes. With that, Frank, we jump into the next question, which is this one here, right?
Yay,
Um,
my favorite.
this is my favorite topic for this show because it's your new book. How did that project come about, and what inspired you? Give us a little bit of background on this book.
Okay, I started I have a book about interesting words and sayings in Creole. That's Belizean Creole language, right?
Mhm.
So I do have an interest in languages. I guess it's because I'm an English major and I studied Spanish for 6 years.
Okay.
So those two, once you know a language, it's easier to learn another and then another. It builds. So I was interested in writing a similar book about interesting Garifuna words and sayings. And then lo and behold, someone came up with that book already. So I said, oh no, there goes my book. What do I do now? So I put it on the back burner for about 4 years. But I had this nagging feeling that we can have more than one book of the same type. You can make adjustments and own your own area or field and make some adjustments, and then more than one book, they can all coexist. So then I thought about the Garifuna people that made an impression on me growing up in Belize City, because I've always known that Garifuna people are highly intelligent. That is why we were sent to be the teachers in faraway villages where no one spoke English. Sometimes they didn't speak Spanish, and they would send a Garifuna teacher, and that Garifuna teacher would learn to speak Maya and learn to speak Quechua, and in some cases, learn to speak Spanish as well. So those were the people that I admired, the early Garifuna teachers. And then from the teaching field, we wound up having Garifuna people that made their mark in the law enforcement area as policemen. We wound up having two chiefs of police that are Garifuna. And then I noticed that we have Garifuna bishops. We wound up having two of those. And there was one almost a bishop in not the Catholic Church, but the Anglican Church. And these people are high performing and they are role models. And then across my radar, I learned about Supreme Court Justice Michelle Arana. That's one of the highest positions in the country as a judge. And later on, I heard that we have a Garifuna mayor of the capital of Belize, the country of Belize, Miss Sharon Palacio, who is also one of my cousins. And then upon research, I found out that there are more Garifuna people that have really excelled. And how come no one talks about their contribution and what they have done not only to the African diaspora, but for the Garifuna community? Why is no one showing them recognition and letting the world know that they are first Garifuna and these are their accomplishments. They are role models for our children and for our grandchildren. If we don't celebrate them, who is going to come along and say these Garifuna people did a really good job? The burden is on us. We have to be the ones to put it out there. So I compiled a nice list of successful Belizean Garinagu. And then I thought, well, I know there are people in Honduras and Guatemala, Garinagu, that have excelled. Who are they? How come we don't know about them? So Google became my best friend, and I Googled up successful Garifuna in Honduras, successful Garifuna in Nicaragua, successful Garinagu in the world, right? And then I found out many people have made their mark also in the United States as successful Garinagu people. So I wanted there to be a link between all the communities so that we can know about each other. We can celebrate the victories. We can feel empowered and enlightened, and we can learn. I can't obviously write about every successful Garifuna person, but the ones that really impressed me, they just whetted my appetite, made me want to know about others. And that's where the audience comes in. If you know about successful Garifuna people that need to be acknowledged and celebrated, do research about them. Maybe you will be able to write something about them to let the world know. Or if you want, you could send it to me for future reference when I update this book. We can learn about each other. We should be proud of what we have done or what our forefathers, those that went before us, some still alive and some no longer alive, but at least write it down, let it stand as a record, as a historical reference that this was accomplished. We don't have to always keep reinventing the wheel. I did a lot of the research, but there should be more people as a collective trying to find out, let's learn about ourselves and let's educate our community and then show the world what we have done in spite of segregation, in spite of discrimination, in spite of colonialization and things like that.
Thank you, Frank. I could actually tell you a couple of names real quick before you move on to give us a little bit more of
Would
the
love
contents
to
of the
hear.
book. But definitely, we met a judge in the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She is Garifuna. She moved there in the island, and she is a judge in Yurumain, the
Wow.
homeland of the Garifuna. Yeah, she is. Last name is Ellis. and
Oh,
she has a sister in Belize, living in Belize, and then she, of course, is married to a someone from Saint Vincent. Yes, and
wow.
so when we went there on our journey to reconnect in 2019 with Aurelio Martinez, Flavio Alvarez, Bodoma, and the contingent from Los Angeles, we were able to spend a lot of time with her. And she's bilingual. She speaks English and Spanish, and of course Creole, because she lives in a Creole speaking island. And
Wow.
also the Laboriels, I think you did mention in your book, who are
Right.
Garifuna, who moved from Honduras into Mexico City. And the father was actually one of the top movie actors in Mexico. And his two sons, one of them plays the drum for McCartney from the
Paul
Beatles.
McCartney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul McCartney. And the other one is a big time producer, promoter here in Los Angeles. So we met him because the son used to come to our Garifuna classes in Los Angeles on
No
48
way.
and Normandy to learn how to drum Garifuna drums,
What?
because he's a bass player. He is one of those studio bass players who gets paid thousands of dollars just to do recordings, and so he used to come and give his donation to us for taking the
Nice.
classes. Of course, we didn't charge anything, but he wanted to donate. And Mr.
Oh,
Mingo Alvarez was one of the teachers, and of course, it was just a joy to have people like that. Of course,
right
but
on.
go ahead with your book.
Yeah, the format for this book, first of all, the title is Garifuna Mother Tongue, and there's a picture of my beautiful mom on it. I owe this lady a lot. Whenever mom and I hung out, the only language we spoke was Garifuna. And I
Wow.
looked forward to that. And before my dad died, it was the same thing. We would only talk in Garifuna because that was their comfort level. They were proud of it, and they loved that I was interested in speaking it, and they really enjoyed it. And they saw it as an opportunity to correct me and encourage me. So that was one thing that bonded us, speaking our language together. So that's one of the reasons I call it Garifna mother tongue. And then not only because it comes from my mother, and then the phrase mother tongue, it's a really nice fit and play on words. And this book has three main parts. One of them is the famous trailblazing and inspirational Garinagu, and we touched on some people, such as the first bank manager in Belize. That was a Garifuna. If you go to a bank in Belize even today, most of the bankers would be non-Garifuna people, or they might not be dark-skinned people at all. So it was really something that he was able to break through that. And we have the first Garifuna senator in the country was Mr. Silas Cayetano from Barranco. We have, uh, let's see, and the Palacio is featured in it as well. We have um, your mentor, Mr. Clifford Palacio, is mentioned in that section.
Yes.
Part two then talks about the many interesting features that make Garifuna a very unique language. We talk about the use of repetition and reduplication. We talk about ideophones and onomatopoeia. Those things, those concepts exist in English, so I wanted to see how they work in Garifuna. So I was able to do some original research about those. We also talk about prefixes and suffixes in the Garifuna language. And then part three talks about command words in Garifuna, emotions and body language. Those are concepts that are talked about, like mental health. It's good to know about those, what the Garifuna words for those are. And then here's something new and unique. Tease words in Garifuna. That's something that would appeal to young kids or students. How do you say curse words in Spanish?
Malas palabras.
Am right? We don't encourage it, but if it's one way for people to gain interest and want to learn how to speak a language, that might be the first thing they ask you. How do you say bad things in Garifuna? Well, we do something similar, and I will leave it there as a way to get people interested. Part four is the interesting Garifuna sayings, and part five talks about my interview with Garifuna linguist and advocate Roy Cayetano. That's a real powerful piece, also. And then, what did I learn from writing this book? How can we teach Garifuna? Why teach it? How can it be used? Things like that. And then the last part, Roni deals with the verb tenses in Garifuna and then the counting system in Garifuna. Colors, I didn't know that we could say just about every color there is. Obviously, our ancestors knew what those words were, but by the time it came to us, we can barely say red, white, blue, green in Garifuna, right? So that is something that people can use. And this book can be used by students of Garifuna language, by teachers, by parents, by Garifuna organizations, and by schools and libraries. And I see it as a way of connecting the Garifuna nation, so we can learn not only about Belizeans, but Garinagu from Honduras, Guatemala, and the United States as well. So
Thank
that's
you.
the book in a nutshell. I think it's one of the only ones of its kind that has taken an approach not just to teaching the language, but also to encourage people to be proud of their cultural identity and heritage by talking about the achievements of famous Garifuna people that they might not be aware of. Because when I wrote this book, I only knew about maybe 10 Garifuna people that I think have done amazing things. But in the process of doing research, I came up with 60, which is not bad at all.
Frank, I also wanted to thank you for having had a mention about me on page 67. You not only talk about me as someone who is a member of the Garifuna community in Los Angeles, but also a little detail on my education and reflections and connections, known as DJ Labuga and so on and so forth. So that was very nice. I appreciate you for having given me a space in your book to tell a little bit about me. And
Absolutely, Ronnie. And before I forget, you and your lovely wife, Cheryl, who I found out was my cousin. I didn't know that when you and I first met, but
yes.
my dad and Cheryl's mom, whenever they saw each other, they would make sure they reminded me that, hey, that's your cousin. So I was like, wow, I didn't know that Ronnie is my friend and his wife is my cousin. How cool is that? And you guys
Thank you.
are partners in Garifuna Duo in running GAHFU. So the Garifuna community is really blessed to have strong leadership when it's combined with a husband and wife dynamic team like yourself and Cheryl.
No, thank you. And I do want to give my wife a big thank you and a big hug, and recognize the fact that she is behind the scenes, but she's a very strong woman. She's a very
Absolutely.
strong leader. She's someone who has pushed me to be the face of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation United, GAHFU, right, the organization. But in reality, she's the one behind giving me that impulse, that ideas, the way that things should be done so that we do it right. And I believe that
Teamwork.
that has been a success because I have a strong woman that is shoulder to shoulder with me in everything that we do. So I just wanted to mention that, and thank you for mentioning my wife as well on your book
Yes.
and in this show. So Frank, we have come to an end of almost 1 hour of interview. But before
Wow.
we go,
Time
yes,
flies.
it's been very pleasant to have you. A very deep learning experience to hear everything that you have shared with us. It's actually recorded, so you could always go back and share it with your friends. It's on GAHFU Garifuna in our YouTube channel. But
Great.
before we go, I wanted to ask you the last questions. You also wrote a book about social media, the Facebook education series, right? How
Yeah.
can Garifuna people use social media to preserve our language, culture, and tradition? Please announce, let us know how that could be accomplished.
Absolutely. We should not take it for granted that when you write a language, you are reinforcing it and you are passing on your love of that language and you are identifying yourself. For example, I would see people write sereme. It's like when you're texting and you post something and you just mention the word sereme, which means thank you, or itarala, which means amen, or aba isiani. Those things are small steps, but they can inspire others. It becomes contagious. For example, when you post pictures of Garifuna outfits, Garifuna dancing, Garifuna music, those are things, they are visual stimuli that people are picking up. And I had one interview that I did. The announcer said, "Oh, the Garifuna people are very powerful. They are beautiful. I am a little jealous when I see all the things they say in Garifuna and all the beautiful Garifuna images that they post." And I'm like, I didn't know that. But he gave me something to think about, and I have to admit that he's on point when he says that that's one way of spreading the Garifna message. Others are picking up on it, and it's a good tool to inspire your friends, your children. It's a small step, but it's a beginning when you use your hashtag on social media. Hashtag Garifuna, right? It says a lot. Or hashtag Paini or hashtag Labuga. People read those things and we need to use it more. And I use the hashtags for my books as well because I'm also a promoter. Once you write the book, you have to promote it and sell it. And those hashtags will make people realize what the product is or what's the information that you're trying to get out there. So it's really a neat tool. It's free, it's easy, and we can all do it to show our pride. And 19th is coming around, and we need to use our hashtags and sprinkle our conversations with Sareme, Itarala, Kemotia, as my friend Roni
Que
loves to
Baragon.
say, Wayanuha.
Wayanuha. Yes. Let's talk. Let's converse. This is our show for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to mention that if you want to know more about Frank Palacio, to visit frankpalacio.com. That's his website. And also there's clips on YouTube. So look him up under Frank Palacio as well. And don't forget to get your book for $19 on Amazon. Again, the name of the book is Garifuna Mother Tongue and Over 50 Famous Garinagu. Garifuna people, right? Over 500 words, sayings, commands, and emotions. It's a wonderful book written by Mr. Frank Palacio, and you should get it because it's got a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you, Frank. Anything else that you may want to share with the audience out there? I know we had a lot of people coming in and out from all over the place. And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn more about you and what you do.
Ronnie, I want to thank you first and foremost for being a leader and a person that loves our language and our culture. And you are getting the message out there. We need more Ronies in the world. And I also love your audience. You are representing not only La Buga, Los Angeles, New York, and the big cities where Garifuna people reside, both here in the United States and abroad. And I want to thank your audience on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all the other platforms. You're providing a service that that is helping to unite and connect all of us. Aba Isiani Sereme Abuti Roni.
Thank you so much, Frank. I want to send a big shout out to our listening audience: Leonida Sanchez, Joycelyn Miller, Marley Chatouillet Nunez,
Wow.
Sandra Valentine, Alex Lara, all the way in Honduras, Kevin Nunez, Maurice Herrera, and also Mr. Let's see, Mr. Marr, Charlie Marr, yes, indeed, and many, many more people who were watching this beautiful interview. Thank you so much, Frank. Take care. Bye bye. Ayo.